Well, there's something called Miller.
Good morning. Welcome to the second session of our two-part series on anti-racism at Montview Church. And today we have two phenomenal women. And before we introduce them, I would like to refresh everyone's minds about the recently passed Montview anti-racism statement. This is also on our church website for reference. Montview has a long history of being a house of prayer for all people. In continuation of this important work and witness, Montview is committed to becoming an anti-racist church dedicated to dismantling the systemic racism that is pervasive in our society. Our sorrow is profound as we acknowledge and lament the complicity of the Presbyterian Church with racism. We believe that racism is the opposite of God's hope for humanity. Christianity calls us to value the unique humanity of each person because each person reflects the image of God. We commit, both as a faith community and as individuals, to doing the work to dismantle systemic racism. As a Matthew 25 caring congregation, we believe that this is part of our calling. As we continue along the path to become an anti-racist church, Montview makes the following commitments: to learn the role we have played in perpetuating systemic racism, to support racial diversity, equity, inclusion, and voice in our congregation, to work for racial justice in government and civic structures, to participate in reparations programs, and to act courageously and creatively against racism in ourselves, our congregation, and our society. Montview is also determined to keep this statement, our commitments, and our approach to anti-racism work vibrant by charging our Anti-Racism Trust Team, also known as ART, with being the church's conscience on this issue. Session will meet regularly with ART to set concrete anti-racism goals within the operation and governance of the church. In addition, ART is independently empowered to provide the congregation with a variety of opportunities to learn about anti-racism, to develop meaningful relationships with people who are different from our predominantly white institution, and to take action for racial justice. Standing together with the power of the Holy Spirit working in us and through us, we are dedicated to creating and sustaining a beloved community. And I would like to welcome Craig McGinnis up next to introduce our wonderful speakers.
Good morning. My name is Craig McGinnis, and I have the pleasure of introducing our two presenters this morning. Two powerful, visionary leaders in the community, and I think we'll learn a lot this morning. First is LaDawn Sullivan. LaDawn is a director at the Denver Foundation, and more specifically is the founder and director of the Black Resilience in Colorado Fund. I haven't had the pleasure personally of working with LaDawn, but I certainly know her by reputation, and I know from people I do work with in the nonprofit world that she is the person you go to if you want to know where it's at. LaDawn, I should also say, is the daughter of our very own Diane Briscoe McKenzie, and I can tell you, you have a very proud mother.
I like her.
Yeah. I want to just, for LaDawn's introduction, actually, I wanted to read a quote from her website. This is her, essentially introducing herself, but I thought it was terrific. I have invested my heart, mind, and various resources to support the people and causes that matter most, and for the betterment of my community. No matter the outcome, my goal in life is not merely to survive, it is to thrive, and do it through giving with passion, humor, style, and most of all, love. By being me, an unapologetic black woman, I wouldn't change a thing. So, LaDawn, thank you for joining us. And then our other presenter this morning is Sade Cooper, who I do know well. I've had the pleasure of working alongside of Sade for over 10 years now in various capacities. She is, among other things, the founder and CEO of Collaborative Healing Within Communities, which is a black women's nonprofit. And I would have to say, I think, the best funded black nonprofit in Colorado, doing amazing work around workforce development in school programs. I'll read you just very briefly our mission statement at CHIC, because as I tell Sade repeatedly, I think it's the best mission statement I think I've ever read. Build women's economic, social, and cultural capital, because powerful women build healthy families and thriving communities. Can I get an amen to that? Okay, thank you. And then lastly, I want to say that Sade's actual focus this morning is going to be the Justice for Black Coloradans initiative, which is an idea she came up with following the murder of George Floyd, when she was thinking, I don't want to just talk about it, I want to do something about it. And originally started a thing called Free Lifetime Education, which turned into Educational Justice for Black Coloradans, now Justice for Black Coloradans. Started out of the womb of CHIC, but with its passage just this past summer by the Colorado legislature, authorizing one of the leading racial justice studies in the United States, and putting Colorado at the forefront of laying a foundation for possible reparations has really become a powerful thing and is on its way to becoming its own organization. So, with that, I will let you hear from two people. The last thing I want to say is, a lot of us ask in this community, what can I do? And I think we're going to hear maybe some answers to that this morning. So, anyway, with that, Sade, LaDawn, thank you so much.
Well, good morning. I'm so honored to be here because one thing is I love the Lord, and none of this work would have not happened without him, because I am not a politician. I don't have a poli-sci degree. I just had the will to move. When God said move, I moved without asking questions, and to be announced we're here. So I am amazed that we were able to pass a bill called Justice for Black Coloradans, which was signed into law on June 4th of 24 last year. Something monumental. And it is also powerful that I'm here because, believe it or not, 5 years ago I started the conversation with your congregation on a Zoom call. And at that time, I showed a video by Kimberly Jones around why we are here. And in that video, it really led to, okay, what can we do outside of just protesting? What is the right thing to do for all? And how do we start to peel back the layers to answer, how did we get here? And if we know better, we'll do better. We'll think about reparative capital, not just reparations. So I am not going to kill you with a lot of slides. I have been advised not to. And just to really just go through a couple of them and tell you, how did we get here? Who is supporting? I also have to give a huge shout out to LaDawn and the BRIC and Denver Foundation because of their support and community support. I'm jumping ahead, but something that is very pivotal. This bill would not have passed if it would have came with a fiscal note for the state of Colorado. Most studies in the country that you see, there is state investment. For our bill to pass, we had to commit to raising $1.8 million. A huge responsibility for my organization, our community. And so why I am recognizing LaDawn is because she stepped up and said, we're gonna go ahead and commit to this study. And we'll talk about a little bit of where we're at and where we have to go, but I just wanted to recognize that this study does not happen without you all in this audience, without the conversations at the table, without our community members. So I'm going to go through with the progress update and then a call to action. Also, you all should have some handouts. On the handouts, it's just statistically where we're at, what we're doing, what we're studying. So before I get into it, I want to start with the quote. It says, "We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist." I am seeing this quote happen in the front of my eyes today. And so when people say, why are we here? Look where we're at. To say, why am I sitting, a Black woman fighting for what we should be doing is right. So Senate Bill 2453 signed into law on June 24th. What this bill does, it creates a racial equity commission that has been, it started. It is authorizing that the state, in the history of Colorado, does a 3-year study. 2.5 years will be looked into looking at 5 areas. One is housing, education, the criminal justice system, health, and what we are calling access to capital. The other 6 months, we will be looking into doing an economic analysis. During this study, there will be opportunities where History Colorado will be engaging in community as far as storytelling. We will also be sharing the findings quarterly, semi-annually, of like what we have found. And so we want to make sure that all Coloradans know. And for instance, a piece that was shared at our last commission meeting that you all don't know, and I'll share this. We were talking about Estes Park, a place that we love so dearly. But History Colorado uncovered that Joel Estes, when he came and settled Estes Park, he brought 5 slaves with him. And that it was such a shock to the Indians, to the indigenous folks that were there, that thousands came out to look at the 5 slaves that Joel Estes brought. So when people say that Colorado was not a slave state, but we had slave practices. When the Ku Klux Klan reigned, Colorado was one of those states. And so History Colorado is helping us look into the disparities, into the laws that hinder the advancement of Black folks here in Colorado. So what's been happening? This work is so crucial. So we are on, I call a media tour. I didn't think I signed up for this, but we are here. Just talking about how important this work is. And I want to say, I know some will be like, oh, this is reparations. And to me, this is more than reparations. I think about reparative capital. And what I mean by that, I envision that if we are repairing a system in healthcare, that maybe a Black person in the state of Colorado never has to pay for a healthcare bill. Maybe we are looking at if redlining was a really contributing factor to Black folks owning. Then how do we think about what does a reduced interest rate look like? Or can we think about down payment assistance truly when we are repairing? And so it is not just about the dollar today. I need the change to happen for generations to come. Because we are building a society for a girl and the boy that I will never meet in my lifetime. And so what are we leaving behind and what are we architecting for the next generation? It is our responsibility. So you can see, if you have not heard about it, you can check us out on CPR, National Public Radio, Denver 7, Denver Post, CBS, Fox 31, because this work is not going anywhere. Updates to our fundraising, as I stated earlier, that in order for this bill to pass, we needed to raise $1.8 million. We have raised the $900,000, and why was this so, I want to tell you why was this so instrumental. In July 5th, we had to turn in a check to $785,000 to the state of Colorado. If we did not turn into that check, there was an opportunity for them to repeal the bill. That check went to allowing History Colorado to hire 5 researchers to do this work. They wanted to make sure that there was funding to cover for the 2 years. That is outside of the commission. That is outside of other expenses that are left and how long this study is taking. Other studies that you might have seen in California took a little bit over a year. Ours is going to take 3. So the time and the investment in this. We have raised $1,025,000. It is a clap. It is a, and that's community, that is partners, that are our foundations, that is individuals who say this has to happen. But we still have one more feat to accomplish. and we have one more check to deliver by July. And so if there is anything that you are thinking about, what can we do? Help and contribute to this cause. Because it will not only affect today, it would affect those who you will never meet. And so what side will you be on of history? What will you be telling your grandchildren and your children that you did? What world will we be painting that is our responsibility for the next? And so I will do this every day, day in and day out, until justice is served for those that was harmed. And I'm just asking that most of you all have a card of like a way to donate, to contribute. I would say outside of donating, talk to somebody about what Justice for Black Coloradans is. Have the conversation at a dinner table. Take a walk and have a conversation and a discussion about what it could be and what it could look like for all. And so with that, that's all that I have. Again, I'm not gonna kill you on slides, but wanted to leave room and opportunity for questions. Please use the mic out. Sorry.
Good morning. I came in as you were being introduced, so I might have missed, this may have been answered already, if so I apologize. It seems a little odd to me that we have to answer these questions, that we have to study it. Like, don't we already know that? And in the current climate, I also see like, this is probably a really good time to go back and underline and underscore the history and clarify. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time finding a question in my statement. I also really appreciate what you were offering, that it's how important it is for us to be talking about the importance of the work, because there is a degree of a head scratching, like, what do you mean we have to prove this? So if you could say a little bit more about why the study had to happen, that would be helpful. Yeah,
so over the 4 years of us writing the bill, there was a lot of research that went into it. And so I myself looked at every reparation movement that was happening across the country, and there was a common theme. Outside of that, there was a professor here at DU that we spoke to named Helen. And very quickly, when we were just talking about educational justice for Black Coloradans, she was like, well, let me take y'all back to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and how that you have justices that sit on a bench, this is before the ruling on affirmative action, that you have justices that sit on the bench that said, in order to create a just society, stop talking about race. They're taking a race-bind approach. We see this today. And she said, in order to make sure that you have legislation that will be grounded, you have to be able to prove the harm. And so, yes, it is redundant. We do have studies. We have books, history books that talk about the harm, but we have to specifically prove the harm. And so for us in History Colorado, we are looking for primary data. Primary data. And so what that means is if it is a law that hindered a Black person to advance or something of such where harm was done, that we can say this is a primary source, it helps us fight the battle when it comes to when we have to go to court. And so that is why we are here, due to the landscape too of where our Supreme Court sits. We know that this will be a battle, and so hence the study.
Good morning. You laid out, it looked like 5 or 6 areas of the study. Is there one or two that you're doing more focus around, or that you feel like are going to be more critical, if you will, to gathering the data and getting the information you need to move forward?
No, I can't say that one is more critical than the other. As we are working with the researchers with History Colorado, I think what we're finding out is there are other opportunities that are not included in here, that we do not have the time to research every single thing. And so we tried to encompass what we thought would be fair, and I think more will come up. There might be a turn, or, as the years go on or the months go on, but I just think we're good here in these issue areas. It's just the things that we won't be able to capture. I will also say another area that will be challenging for this is the economic analysis. And so that is supposedly to take 6 months. I do not know of how History Colorado is going to work with that. I know they'll probably bring some consultants in, but that is a big one for us, is the economic analysis. I hope I answered that.
As someone who was down at your testimonies from Together Colorado, there are other minority groups like Native Indigenous folks and the Japanese who have gotten studies and laws passed across the country. Are there other minority groups that are like in protest of what the Black history is trying to do because they're not included in the Black history? Or are you getting any pushback at all from any other groups? Awesome.
No. Which is such has been a blessing.
Yeah.
We have not been getting pushbacks from other groups. I think outside of the 144 organizations that supported this bill, we had Indigenous leaders, we had leaders from the Latinx community. So we haven't yet been getting any pushback. And I think for us it is, we are setting the narrative, like we are doing things the Colorado way. What works for us in our community. So no pushbacks, and we've been very vocal, like we do not want this bill to be, as what Javon Brown would say, the oppression Olympics against race. Like, this is not what this is about, you against me, but we know that we want the tide to lift all boats. And so what is you investing in something like this? This will better all communities from that lens, so.
Hello, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to see you. I have a wonky question, sorry. So if you are not able to answer it because who knows, is the study going to be conducted through statistical analyses too? Or are you going to do primarily anecdotal and looking through records? So it's not quite as powerful, but still gives you great information. Or are you going to do a mixture of both of those things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for your question. What I do know of how History Colorado is approaching this work, it's both. There will be parts where they'll be capturing stories from community, but also going back and statistically looking at bills, laws, timeframes, who was running, what happened, the effects. So there are 5 different researchers for each area where they are going in and looking into, along with those who they are asking to come forward as well with any documentation that can pertain to the study. So it is both. Well, if there's no more questions, I will turn it over, but I will ask that please follow this work. You can follow this work at justiceforblackcoloradans.com. You can also follow History Colorado. They have a link directly relating to this work. And the updates, I would say, come and be a part of the conversation, but then again, have the conversation. So thank you for inviting me out today.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, that's much better. I know it's daylight savings. It was hard for me to get up to this morning. Thanks, Sade. It was an awesome presentation and engagement with the group here today. For those who may have just quietly snuck in, my name is LaDawn Sullivan, and I'm the Executive Director of the Black Resilience in Colorado Fund. I'm just going to share a couple of tidbits about what we do, why we do it, and kind of how I got here. So I'm going to start with how I got here first. And thank you for the lovely introduction earlier. I actually started at the Denver Foundation, which is the oldest community foundation here in Colorado. It's 100 years old this year. I started there in 1997 on accident in the finance department, but I kept being so nosy in the neighborhood department that they were just like, LaDawn, just go over there and work in the community. That being said, I would say, Carol was nice enough. She said, share your calling, how did you get here? And for me and my faith, I love the story of Nehemiah. It's my favorite story, chapter 3, about how he encouraged the community not to worry about building up the whole city, but just worry about the part that is most directly connected to you, and to work collectively and share with your neighbors what they may need and what you may need in order to build stronger walls and a stronger community and the beautiful city that was built because of that spirit. That is what, for me, has fueled my passion about giving and philanthropy and community. And so, like I said, I started in 1997. I really started to find an unusually amazing path, particularly about Black communities and who Black people are as givers. In 2008, where I went to a conference that changed my life, that talked about how we can collectively give, that if all of us put aside our own personal desires and think collectively and community-minded and pour in together, we can actually create amazing changes in our community, and we can create the change that we collectively wish to see. And so that really started what is now nationally known as Giving Circle work. So there are a lot of giving circles, particularly in the Black community. It has really elevated how people see how philanthropy happens, particularly in communities of color, and how here, one of the first all-Black men giving circle west of the Mississippi called DAP, Denver African American Philanthropists, began. These brothers came together and each one gave $365, $1 a day. But not only did they give the money, they also gave what we call the 5 T's. They gave their time, they gave their talent, they gave their treasure, they gave their testimony, and they gave their social ties or their networks, and leveraged those to actually create change in community. With that, seeded this crazy, harebrained idea I had well before we started BRIC, 7 years before. What would it look like if we actually had a Black fund here in Colorado that was completely focused and led by Black people? Not saying that philanthropy does not pour into historically marginalized communities. It does. But there's something different when you are in the driver's seat of your own destiny, of your own community. There's an intentionality about fostering the leadership of that community, creating intentional space, and intentional buy-in. There is plenty of room for allies, but there is something unique and specific and needed, particularly in marginalized communities, and I'll just say in Black communities, for us to be in the driver's seat for our community. So I was working in the foundation for several years. I was the director of leadership and equity for the Denver Foundation, and then the pandemic hit, and the murder of Breonna Taylor, and then I guess if you want to say this apex of the murder of George Floyd was monumental. And it really seeded, I always call it like this, it's almost like a double accident, a horrible double accident of the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd that created a whirlwind of specific spotlighted energy in this country to actually create change specifically in Black communities. And so that's really what seeded the Black Resilience in Colorado Fund. We work specifically as a perpetual resource. Our goal is to be here, to continue to provide resources for however the Black community sees it needs to be invested in itself. And that has started in 2020 with supporting Black-led and Black-serving nonprofits. So we provide grants. We have a program called the Executive Directors of Color Institute, which is beyond just Black leaders, but are leaders of color who are running nonprofits who often are the only person in the room when it comes to capacity building or leadership development, which can feel quite uncomfortable. Because often in those spaces, there's no connection to the history, heritage, and culture of people of color and how their leadership blossoms. And so we've created an intentional space for that work. It's been around for 14 years. We have over 300 alums, and we have 40 starting the class at the end of March. It's a 2-year program. It's completely free to the participants, and it is amazing. It refuels me every year. I always keep saying, I'm going to retire, and then I go to that class, and I'm like, I'm here. As I said, we do make grants. We have an annual grant cycle. Those grants are up to $25,000. It's a responsive cycle, meaning folks submit an application. We have community members who serve on our review committee as well as our board, and they do a lot of it's a lot of work to ensure that we're supporting organizations, Black-led and serving organizations across the metro area who are doing the good work to ensure that our communities are receiving support, and I would even say thinking future forward has really been an important part, and CHIC has been one of our grantees. And Sade mentioned this earlier, CHIC actually was one of the first of 2 organizations that our board decided that we really needed to do something more monumental, multi-generational, that we needed to make significant investments, up to $100,000. And our first 2 liberation grants, because we consider it's liberating for an organization to get a 6-figure grant that is general operating support, meaning that we don't have any specific ties to it, though they're doing work that is going to stretch across generations, is super important. And so CHIC Denver received $100,000 for the project that Sade spoke about today. And then we also gave $100,000 to Cleo Parker Robinson Dance for their expanded campus, which if you drive by there, it's coming along quite beautifully. We also know that our organizations, our Black-led and serving organizations, do not have the same access to capital when it comes to purchasing land, buying buildings, building out long-term lease spaces, maybe it might even be replacing one of the things we've given a small loan. So we have a loan program of up to $50,000. The interest never exceeds 1.5%. They can pay it back over 5 years. and we work with the organizations to prepare to ensure that they're, I guess if you want to say, having this process happen where they're understanding more concretely what it means to have access to greater capital in a more partnered way. And so we've given out about $200,000 in loans to organizations, anywhere from doing build-outs for new buildings that they've purchased, to repaving parking lots, a new roof, handicap or accessibility refurbishment, and a land purchase. So it's been kind of all over the board, but awesome. And then I want to make sure I'm touching on everything, and then I want to close with one other thing. So we also know we can't do this work alone. And though we are one of many, but we are representative of the Black community, particularly in the foundation space. There are others, like the Latino Community Foundation, the Asian Pacific Development Center, which is now under Aurora Mental Health, the Asian Pacific Islander, I'm going to get their other name wrong. It's CASIN. I'll think of what the acronym means in a minute. But we work in coalition with them under a coalition called Communities Lead, Communities Thrive. And similar to CHIC's great work with the legislature, a couple of years ago, we actually were able to secure over $33 million for historically marginalized organizations so that they could actually have some recovery funds from the pandemic. What we do know, and particularly in BRIC's starting and our continued work, is that when there are times of crisis, particularly in communities of color, they go to the organizations that they trust. And 9 times out of 10, those are organizations that look like them. And those organizations will pivot. So just because their mission might be dance, like Cleo Parker Robinson, I'll use it as an example, doesn't mean that they weren't providing food, providing rental assistance, electricity assistance, all these different things, because that's what we do in our communities, is that we pivot according to the need. And we're very proud of that fact. I always talk about for BRIC is that our goal is to build strong Black communities, and in particular, move us from this mindset and being of surviving to thriving, where we're not worried about where our next meal is coming from, but we're actually thinking forward about how we're going to build and how we're going to create even greater space for the generations to come. Lastly, I'll say BRIC, we started in 2020, but we are one of about 63 Black funds from across the country, and I actually co-chair a network that got started kind of on accident on purpose in 2021. So, and we talk and meet, but we also understand, kind of back to that Nehemiah thing, that every neighborhood is different, every state or city is different. And so where these Black funds are, their work, their reach, their support, their size, and their vision forward is reflective of the communities that they serve, and that we have an intentionality to ensure that the voice of the communities that we're working in are always in lead. If BRIC is in lead of the Black community in Colorado, we are wrong. Our goal, and I would say our mandate, is to continually to listen and create intentional space for the Black communities in Colorado to lead us forward. That's, I don't know. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions about BRIC. I'm happy to talk about anything. I can tell you about some of our partnerships or more about how folks can get involved. Yes, sir.
I wonder if from a foundation fundraising perspective, you could just give us your perspective on kind of what you see in at least the near, let's say, 4-year time horizon future for challenges around money and cash flow and funding of the types of organizations you work with.
Sure. So we're now in Vegas. This is Las Vegas. So if you say, LaDawn said this, I'm going to say, what? I didn't say it. Oh, we're recording it, aren't we? Doggone it. So there's a couple things. One is, this is an interesting time. You have to remember, and let me speak more generally in traditional philanthropy first. Most foundations have their money, some of their money's invested in the market. So if the market takes a hit, they tighten up because their corpus has gone down. Though you will see, like, it just depends, like during the pandemic, you had folks loosen the reins. So usually most foundations spend 5% of their corpus every year. If you know the math, it's 5% of whatever their total dollars are, they'll put back out into the community. During the pandemic, some of them rose 6, 8, even 10% because we were in a state of crisis. I'm not sure that this is reading as the same type of crisis, which is pretty concerning. And then when you have the rollback of the words DEI, which, you know, they're like dirty words now, unfortunately, that also causes a lot of strain, particularly when you're talking about fundraising, like for the project that Sade's doing, the work that we're doing with BRIC, because people get nervous. I mean, I've had some people reach out to me about our website. They're like, your website is very black. I'm like, I know. I'm just saying. So, well, with that being said, there's also sometimes this quick flip, which is as the new administration continues to share its direction, I'm really trying to be politically correct, share its direction, you also will see folks who disagree with that become greater investors in our work, if they know that we're here. That's part of it too. You know, we're in an information age like none other. I mean, everybody's raising money for something. So that can sometimes be a help, but sometimes it can be a hindrance. Last thing I'll say is, during the pandemic, we had a huge groundswell of new nonprofits, where people were like, you know what, I'm at home. I'm not making light of this, but I'm just saying. They're like, I'm at home. I care about my community. I'm going to start a project. I'm going to start a nonprofit. And so we're also going to see a lot of nonprofits close. Some of that is natural selection of, you know, I would say the fit, the redundancy, because we have a lot of organizations that are doing the same thing for a very small amount of people. As I just spoke to a group via Zoom of about 500 nonprofits, I anticipate that the administration is about to crack down on compliance of nonprofits. If you don't have your bylaws, you don't have your board, you don't have your 990s file, you don't have all these specific check things, that is going to be a huge problem. But I would also say to the everyday person to be mindful about not just that checklist, but also be mindful about the organizations you're supporting. Because, like I said, I've been in this for 27 years, and I've seen organizations get a grant for $50,000 and shutter their doors in 2 weeks. So you have to be, so I'm just saying, and I'm not saying that to scare people, I'm just saying this is where we all need to be better educated about the organizations that work in our community, how they work, who they're helping, what does it mean, the forward-thinking parts. There's a lot in this data project that's going to be hugely informative for BRIC. I mean, we see this as a win-win. One, we want to support this. It has generational impacts, but it also is going to pour into how we're looking at the organizations that are supporting Black communities as we find out more about what was then that will inform what is going forward. And so some of the things that we may think are important, this report could actually bring to light that we need to be thinking about some shifts in things, doing things differently.
I have a couple of thank yous. Thanks to both of you for being here today. It's really wonderful. LaDawn, thank you. People may not know that the royalty reparations program that we're doing here at Montview of having funds set aside every time we perform a spiritual, LaDawn really helped us in directing our first tranche of funds to an organization here in town. Thank you for being here, because establishing relationships is so important. Understand the need for money, understand the need for contributions, but if you could talk for a minute about what your organization, Sade, maybe both of you, are doing to deepen relationships, not just donors, but actual personal relationships with people outside the Black community.
You know, what are we doing if I'm understanding, to deepen relationships outside of the Black community? Well, I'm doing things like this today. No, not infrequently. If anybody truly knows me, I'm very sociable. So I'm going to show up in the places where people do not. I also think that even for JBC, that it's time to go back, and I want to do some guerrilla marketing, and I want to go knock on doors in all communities to talk about this. And so that is coming. Like, I don't want to just where you see a flyer, never a face, but to truly say, my name is Sade, and I want to hear you out, and I want you to hear us out, and like, how do we move together? And so that is what we're doing, and then showing up in places as such. That I say home, like any place with the Lord is home. So we're here. I'll show up at a house. So we are here to do these things. I don't know.
Agreed, I'm here too. I also would say, I don't shy away, well, I was gonna say it, no, first of all, my mother is a member here, but when the anti-racist group, through her, I've had a few conversations, I think, in different iterations with the group or individuals in the group about specific questions. My door, Zoom or in-person door, is open. What I recognize and what BRIC recognizes is that this work will never succeed if we operate in a bubble. But as was stated earlier, I'm never going to apologize for being Black and expressing my leadership in the work. So as long as we're clear about, I want to say, the rules of engagement, it's open. I don't ever want a white person to be afraid to engage because they think they're going to say something wrong. So I'm just going to say this out loud. I would rather us have a moment of clarification, and I would say in this space in particular, I think there's a way to have mutual love and respect, even in the midst of discovery or maybe a little right setting, right? And it's happened often. I'm no spring chicken. So in this work or just in general, I think we've all had these life experiences. But I say this to my white colleagues all the time. I always have to go into white spaces and figure it out. So I'm encouraging you to come into some black spaces and let's figure it out. And, you know, it can be a little bumpy, but we'll figure it out. I just think that's one of the most important things about building a relationship. That's authentic and intentional, right? Is for us to at least show up. At least show up.
I had a question about BRIC. You're doing amazing things and making these grants and these programs, but where do you get your funding to be able to do all this?
So our funding comes from comes from individual donors. It comes from foundation partners. And then a little bit of fee for service, because I do some speaking stuff, and that goes into BRIC. But I don't think we've ever said it out loud, but since 2020, we've raised a little over $9 million, and we've put out about $6 million, and that does, I mean, we also have some operations costs and other things, but when I say we've put out $6 million, that's like the grants, that's the programming work. It's what we have invested in our executive directors that are in our program, our loans, et cetera, so.
Thank you both for being here. I'm curious, I'm sure you have, but can you talk a little bit about the work that you've done with the schools to publicize some of the research that you're doing? I think that they would be very interested to know about I have a middle school student, so I'd be very curious to know what the kids know and how they can contribute and participate.
Yeah, so the study just officially started in December. And so I'm sure that will be potentially an area of opportunity to engage, or how they are thinking about sharing the information. I can't in 100% speak to their plan of History Colorado, but I do know they are in this receiving or wanting to receive recommendations as well. But I would assume the children's voice of how we share this information will be included. I just don't know how exactly.
I'm Marilyn Ackerman, and I just want to thank you both for being here today, LaDawn and Sade. I am the coordinator of the small group Jamar's TISB Anti-Racism Studies here. And this is a perfect ending to our 2-week art program that we've done. And thank you, Carol, for reading the anti-racism statement. But I think Sister Diane here, who spoke last week about microaggressions and her pet peeve of people saying, what can we do? And you both saying that. There are lots of things we can do. And as white people in a mostly predominant white church, we have an obligation, if we want to become allies or co-conspirators, as Jamar Tisby would say, to learn our history, know where we are in our history, because white people aren't very good at that, and build those relationships that we talked about last week and this week. And so I'm going to give you an opportunity in Lent, and I want to, Jason and Clover left, I was going to give them a shout out on their sermons, because they have been talking about getting off the mountaintop, which I think Montview thinks we're on, and getting down into the valley and doing the work, or getting out of our caves, because we're so frustrated, we don't know where to begin and we don't know what to do. And the opportunity is right in front of you. We've had 150 people go through the Jemar Tisby studies. 130 of those are Montview members. 20 of those are other people from other churches. And right now, we have 5 classes we're offering starting Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and I only have 17 people signed up. I will be canceling 3 classes tomorrow. 10 of those people who are the 17 are from other churches. We only have 7 Montview members signed up. And if you do the math, we're at about 7% of our congregation. Jemar Tisby says that we have to get to 20% if we are really going to do anything in this anti-racism space as allies and co-conspirators. So I'm encouraging you to take your calendars out in Lent, the second Sunday of Lent, or third Sunday of Lent, and look into your heart to build those relationships with your other congregants and do the tough work to get to the place that we can do something big, and as well as giving money, as well as showing up at these wonderful talks that we're having. But it's work to get to be to that, on that journey of anti-racism. I step in it all the time. I am a microaggression abuser with my own daughter of color, and I get called out on it, or as we say in our house and in my Together Colorado work, I get called in, asked to talk about, let's talk about what you just said, Marilyn. Let's talk about how I can be a better mother, a better co-conspirator, and an ally for my friends, and get in those spaces where there are people of color, especially Black people. And I can give you all kinds of ideas to do that if you want to talk to me afterwards. But go to the TWAM, the registration is there. There are every other week classes, and there are every week classes. There are only 6 sessions, and let's get busy. And I'd like to introduce Rita. Rita Hood is gone through both classes, and now she's a co-facilitator. You don't have to have any degrees to do this, but if you would just share, why is this important to you?
Thank you, Marilyn, and I don't mean to have my back to anybody, but as a very long-time member, I just have to say that my experience getting involved in taking the Tisby classes here 3 years ago has really transformed my life. And I would highly recommend you getting on that journey. I think I've been on it now for 3 years. And yeah, I didn't think I needed to learn anything new about this, but oh boy, did I need to learn a lot about our culture, this world we're living in, and all the history that I had no idea about. So it's transformed my life, and now this is a primary reason for my existence in my 70s. And I feel real energized because of these Tisby studies, to do more, to be more. So I highly encourage you to take this leap and take these classes. The very best part, in addition to learning the history of our country's complicity, and especially the Christian faith's complicity in racism, is that you get to meet one-on-one with lots of members that maybe you haven't met before, and you get to know some Montview people that you didn't know. And I certainly, even though I've been here for 40 years, I certainly met a lot of new people as a result of taking these classes. So there's lots coming back for what little bit you're going to give out to put out for 2 hours, maybe a week, or every other week. You get tons more back, and it has transformed my life. So I highly encourage, if you haven't taken these classes, to sign up, because we need more mass of Montviewers to really do something of value in with this work.
Good morning, Montview. And ladies, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you can see, I got notes all over my program here. I've been taking copious notes this morning. But anyway, I am a member of ART, and I was also one of the originators of the Courageous Conversations that Montview did years ago. So I thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to express what is so important to me, and that is ending racism. I'm a product of the 60s of Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and we were the civil rights movement at that time. But I'd like to say quickly that Maryland, when you talk about showing up and not being the only one in the room, Maryland we're very good friends. And when I say this, you'll know why I could say it to her. But she used to always invite me to things. And I said, no, I'm not going. And she said, why? I said, because I'm tired of being the only black person in the room. And that was correct. So I'm saying to you, we need your support in order to get this done now more than ever. And one of the things I'd like to invite you to is the Spelman College Glee Club concert. Will be at Park Hill United Church on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. It's in the TWAM, and I am wearing my 50th reunion medallion from Spelman College. I know I was only 5 when I first went there, but this says I stayed there 50 years at least. Now it'll be 60 years in 2027. So thank you all for showing up today. As a member of ART, I appreciate it and appreciate all you do. And thank you, ladies.